For China, let me pull out a few interesting things. I think China is really, there are three stories going on here. Let me start with the optimistic one. Express shipments, which is mostly it's domestic express, so it's home delivery, rapidly took off during the virus. You remember the virus hit China in February. The peak of lockdown was the March period, going into April, and then by May the country started to open up again, and with people going back to work and back to daily life. Express was growing in China anyway. However, we've seen an even faster growth rate of express shipments, driven by the greater use of e-commerce shopping and people wanting to order at home. International express has been growing just as well as domestic express. There's then a big chunk in the middle here on the chart, and this is actually composed of two different things within it. The first one is domestic travel. So you'll see that we have lines on here looking at domestic air passengers, hotel room nights, subway passengers, rail passengers. So it's kind of how are people moving around in China. Initially, there was obviously a very big dip. So let's take air travel, for instance, was down by 90% in February, recovered a little bit, but now, as of September, it's just about above where it was this time last year. Same with the hotels, that pretty closely tracks the air travel. Rail has recovered a little bit slower, and that's actually because of how the airlines have priced versus how the railroads have priced. For many of the long-distance rail journeys in China, there is a real choice between air and rail. And the airlines have been very aggressive with low promotional fares and subscription schemes to win back passengers. Rail here has not so much. And so that's why we've seen domestic air passengers come back faster than domestic rail passengers. Also in this middle grouping, though, is logistics-related functions. So if we were to take something like trucking, for example, initially there was a hit. Remember that the time which COVID-19 hit China was Chinese New Year. It was late January, early February. Chinese New Year is a time when all the migrant workers are back home. And the lockdown therefore happened when the workers were not in the same location as the factories and were not in the coastal ports. That meant that initially there was a big supply shock. China just could not manufacture, could not transport, and could not export the goods demanded by the world. And that therefore hit trucking volumes and hit container volumes, for example. China fairly quickly got those people back to work, and basically all those factories then started producing again very quickly through kind of April and May before we hit a second dip, which was the start of the lockdowns in US and Europe. What we're seeing now, however, is basically container throughput is pretty much where it is back last year, and on some trades it's in fact above. We've seen, especially the US, for example, the US imports from China are higher than they were this time last year. And that's been driven by the US having a significant shift in consumption, away from consumption of services and towards consumption of physical products. It's the physical products which require the logistics and logistics and transportation. Finally, there's a couple of lines at the bottom here. International air passengers is still down about 97% from where it was this time last year. Cruises are still totally banned in China. The government has not yet reopened this for mainland China. And unfortunately, this looks likely to stay for some time to come. Initially, when the virus first hit, China was trying to encourage airlines to keep international routes open. However, we now have the situation where the domestic transmission within China is practically zero. Day-to-day life has been normal for the past few months. And in the words of the Prime Minister of China, look, this is a hard-fought battle. China's biggest fear now is re-importing the virus. Therefore, there are very strict testing restrictions. There are very few flights allowed into China, and those which are allowed in, all arrivals need to quarantine for 14 days. That's because basically China's #1 priority is to prevent the virus from re-entering the country. We see this likely to stay for some time, while other parts of the world continue to have quite widespread new community spread, China's borders are likely to remain closed for international passengers. Only widespread vaccine or some other form of herd immunity or a really accurate test is likely to see this open up earlier.